I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling. Shouldn't be trusting me, I could be making it all up, you know. Control, you don't know me. I'm a danger to myself.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. How are you guys doing? It's been a long time. I know I got all wrapped up into Stranger Things. Not gonna lie, I just am obsessed with that show and had to get through. I had to binge it and everything. And let me tell you, if you guys are into Stranger Things, you guys are right where I'm at, and you totally get why I got a little obsessed for a minute there. But I'm back and I'm ready to go. I also had some technical difficulties and lost all of my notes, which I keep on my laptop, and they were just gone one day. Everything was just wiped out. Stupid me. It took me 3 days to realize that just turn the damn thing off and turn it back on again. Voila, they were back. Okay, so I am a natural blonde. I'm not... My hair's not this dark. I am a natural blonde, and I had a definite blonde moment. But let's get into what we came here for, and that is Nikolas Cruz. We're not going to glorify his name, right? But I do have to say it, otherwise you won't know who I'm talking about for the most part. So we're just going to go through his life, okay? We're going to go through his upbringing. We're going to go through from when he was born until the day he did what he did. So let's start now. Nikolas Jacob Cruz was born September 24th, 1998 in Margate, Florida. He was born to a crack-addicted mother. I mean, maybe she wasn't an addict. You know what? She was. Brenda Woodard, Nikolas' birth mother, was a career criminal and had been arrested 28 times for many crimes, such as car theft, weapons charges, weapons possession, burglary, domestic V, and also was using crack while pregnant with her oldest child, Danielle. Danielle Woodard, Nikolas's biological sister, was raised mostly by her grandmother because Brenda was sent to jail for this shit she was pulling. Unfortunately, the pattern of life that Brenda was living did trickle down into her daughter, and in turn, Danielle has been arrested over 17 times and is currently serving an 8-year prison sentence on charges that include attempted murder of a police officer. Brenda was arrested for possession of crack cocaine while pregnant with Nikolas. 3 days after Nikolas was born, Jacob Cruz and Linda Kombatovich adopted him. Okay, and I say adopted him because the backstory on that is that Jacob Cruz was 62 years old at the time, and Linda was 49. They were also still unmarried at that time, and that, coupled by their age, made it very difficult for them to be able to adopt through any traditional system. It was said that they paid Brenda's lawyer for the expenses associated with transferring custody of Nikolas, and that was paid in the amount of $50,000. I guess in a sense they bought him. Brenda did go on to have one more child, and that would be Nikolas's half-brother, Zachary, who was born in prison about a year and a half later, and Jacob and Linda adopted him as well. So both boys were living in the home. Now, we're going to go into, obviously we're going to begin with elementary, but first, remember when I said that Nikolas Cruz had issues from a very young age? Well, literally, from the time that he learned to walk, he displayed deeply disturbing behavior. A former neighbor recalled that her 4-month-old son was crawling on the back patio, and Nikolas threw her son into the pool, and Cruz was only 2 years old at the time. A year later, at the age of 3, Cruz was kicked out of a private pre-K program because he wouldn't stop biting other students. Linda brought him to a specialist from the Broward School District, and they determined that at 3 years and 5 months old, Cruz had the mind of a child who had just turned 2. So he's behind. He's exhibiting, some bizarre behavior. But, as a mom of 4, I've had kids that bite. It's a stage. They bite you. And, and even toddlers at 2 can have some pretty gnarly tantrums, to the point where, people can get hurt. But they all grew out of it, and whatever. So, is it disturbing yet? Throwing another child into a pool at the age of 2, you would think that would be definitely something that would be out of the norm. But just this troubled kid, a 2-year-old doesn't really understand that if you throw someone in the water, they could die, right? Anyway, let's just keep going here. So he was diagnosed at that time with having a developmental delay. Later on, with a speech impairment and a language processing deficiency, as well as attention deficit disorder. It was determined that because he liked to bite, pinch, and scratch other students, that he required maximum teacher assistance in order to interact safely with peers in his public school's pre-K class. Also, for the 2 years of pre-K, he had to be placed in a restrictive harness in order to even ride the school bus with the other kids. So right away, he's having issues to the point where he cannot just attend school alone. He can't not be monitored, and he can't even be on the bus or be trusted to be on a bus with other students without being in a harness. So, that's a little scary. While in kindergarten, his teachers met with Linda to discuss his aggression and animal fantasies. Now, I left myself a little spot here because right now, I don't know how many of you have children right now in public schools, but I do. I have a few. And right now, there is a thing where children are kind of acting out an animal fantasy, and the school is going along with this. They're not considering it a problem. And I think it's very interesting that Nikolas Cruz did have some animal fantasies, and we're about to get into those and the depth of those. But I don't think that it's normal to treat a student as an animal. I think that is something that would be a red flag for me as a teacher and certainly as a parent. Because while I send my children to school, to learn, and part of learning is, playing at recess and whatever, my kids need to know that when they're in the classroom, they need to learn. They are learning. They are there to learn. They are not there to pretend or play, and if my daughter was in school insisting that her teacher referred to her as a cat and meow at her, and she only meowed to the teacher, that's disrespectful as fuck, in my opinion. And if my daughter was doing that to her teacher, I would want a phone call home saying, look, your daughter is acting like a cat in my class. She's not responding to questions with words. She's meowing, she's purring, she's biting, scratching, whatever. And I would want to know that. Well, these days, some of what we're going to get into later on in parts 2 and 3 and 4 are the schools are keeping these things from the parents, and they're not disciplining children for these things. And this is a huge, huge problem. Before I get it, keep going on this rant, this is like a whole nother video in and of itself. I am going to be creating another channel where I talk about things like this so that I can just stick to the true crime part instead of a lot of my feelings and emotions about things, because what's more important are facts. So we're going to go through all these facts, but this is it's very concerning what's going on right now in schools. And this is exactly where I'm going with this video and this series. So back to where we're at. So while in kindergarten, I told you, he was having these animal fantasies. So his teachers explained that he seemed to identify as an animal. He often crawls on the floor, he growls and pounces on other students, and he makes seemingly animal-like growling sounds and grimaces while holding his hands in a paw-like manner. His mother was notified, and they had a meeting where they discussed that Nikolas had an issue acting out his fantasies, often explosively. He would express feelings of stress and anxiety. At school, the transition times appeared to be particularly threatening to him, and he would appear to act more aggressively. So he was having trouble transitioning from one thing to the next. And that is typical with ADHD. I only know because I have a child with it and I myself have it. But that is somewhat typical. But the aggression is something that is a little bit more serious. But again, I'm not gonna get all into my shit. We're just gonna go on with the facts here. Issues with small changes were traumatic for him. He was labeled as requiring exceptional student education. In short, ESE. And that is similar to special education in other states. And this was going to be due to his emotional and behavioral disability. So throughout this series of videos that I'm going to be putting out covering this subject, I'll be referring to children with disabilities a lot. When I'm talking about the disabilities, to most people, you're gonna think physical disabilities, right? A handicap. But in Nikolas Cruz's case, when I talk about children with disabilities, I'm talking about a behavioral disability, meaning these children cannot behave in a normal school setting. It is very difficult for them to control themselves in a normal school setting. I told you guys in my last video that Nikolas was very young when his father passed away. And from now on, when I'm talking about Nikolas's parents, I know I started out talking about his biological mother. I'll be talking about the only parents that he has ever known, and that would be Jacob and Linda Cruz. 2 months after that meeting Linda had with the kindergarten teacher, Nikolas had walked into the kitchen in tears. His mother asked him, "What's the matter? Did Daddy punish you?" Cruz replied, "Nope, Daddy's dead." Jacob Cruz had died of a heart attack right in front of Nikolas, which is a trauma that would do lasting and profound damage to any child who had witnessed it. Later on that month, Cruz entered kindergarten in a self-contained classroom for ESE students with behavioral disabilities. So he enters kindergarten in a special classroom designed for students with these disabilities. Linda decided that he should repeat kindergarten to create a stronger foundation. And it seemed to have worked because by the end of his second year of kindergarten, he had transitioned successfully into a normal classroom, and he began first grade in 2006 as a normal student. Unfortunately, that would be short-lived because about 2 months in, his teacher reported that she was unable to control his aggression. And by the end of first grade, he had to be physically removed from the classroom on an almost daily basis, often several times a day. For second grade, Cruz returned to a self-contained classroom for ESE students with behavioral disabilities. So they tried it, it didn't work, they put him back into the special class. By third grade, his ESE specialist wrote in her notes in May of 2008 that Cruz had expressed feelings of sadness and not feeling as if he was in control of things. She said Cruz reported that nothing goes his way and he does not seem able to control what happens to him. He also reported that he almost always feels that his life is getting worse and worse, and he used to be happier. The teacher also said that he would physically lash out at other students. So he is quite young to be having these types of feelings. In the middle of Nikolas Cruz's 5th grade year, teachers had to make a choice that would define the future of his education. In earlier years, a student that was behaving this way And displaying these types of things would continue to receive specialized attention in a self-contained classroom for students with similar disabilities for at least part of the day in middle school. However, at this time, between the pressure on schools to assess students using standardized testing under the federal No Child Left Behind Act, and the pressure on schools to put students in the least restrictive environment possible under the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, spending part of the day in a specialized classroom was no longer an option for a student like Nikolas Cruz in Broward County Middle School. It was either full inclusion at Westglades Middle School or full exclusion at a specialized school for students with emotional and behavioral disabilities at Cross Creek. I think, knowing what we know now, most of us could agree with the fact that he should have been at Cross Creek, the specialized school, as opposed to Westglades, which was the regular middle school. But his teachers decided to try to prepare him to attend Westglades. So halfway through his 5th grade year, they placed him in a normal classroom for 40% of the day. By the end of the year, Linda was pleased with her son's ability to sit in a normal classroom without being disruptive or violent. Nikolas was on an individualized educational program, also known as an IEP, which gave him a team that created tailored plans for him and other students with disabilities in consultation with their parents. So basically, the teachers and the parents worked together to help the students succeed. And his team decided to enroll him as a 6th grader for the 2011-2012 school year, where he would be treated essentially the same as any other student. And this is where we are going to see some more difficulty. And we will get into that in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe, and I will be back with part 2 as soon as possible.
Oh, you don't know me. I am fading unfelt.
Oh, I also had some technical difficulties. Because I am interrupted. Not watch me.